Hi and welcome to Lyne RC. In this video I'll review the upgrades we made on our Arrma Big Rock BLX version 3. I use the Big Rock here as an example, but since the Arrma Granite, the Vorteks, the Senton and the Typhoon all share the same platform, most of the upgrades apply to all models. The Big Rock is a great all-round truck and can be used for several purposes, like racing on a track, jumping on ramps, or just casual bashing around. We have had both a Granite version 3 and a Big Rock version 3 for more than 2 years, and we've used them a lot. We have discovered several weak points during that period and upgraded the cars to mitigate that. With these upgrades, the cars are both more durable in case of a crash or bad landing, but also resistance to wear and tear is improved a lot. So let's go through the upgrades. Durability is actually good for this body, but still I've chosen to reinforce it. And one of the first things you'll notice is these. It's a 3D printed piece of plate that protects these corners, because this is where it will break early. It also has on the inside some inserts here to reinforce that part. You could also choose to put some reinforcements here on the top, skid plates like this. As you can see, it's starting to wear here, but I think it looks best without, so I haven't done that. You might also notice that I have reinforced the body using drywall tape and shoe glue, and it really helps a lot. This is still the only body we have used, so with these upgrades it can take a beating. If you get a scratch somewhere, I recommend that you reinforce it using some tape. I prefer using fiberglass reinforced strapping tape, also known as filament tape, like this. Remember to clean the surface before you apply the tape with some brake cleaner, rubbing alcohol or something. You could also choose to simply replace the whole body with a more durable body, like for instance the Pro Line Bash Armor. We've done that on our Granite. There's a link in the top description here. You have probably noticed the zip ties here, front and the rear. And the reason for them is that we have broken a lot of these shock shafts here. The problem is when you land in a crash, land upside down, the car hits the ground like this, you often break the shock shaft. Simply the shock shaft here gets ripped out of the mounting point here. You can try to put it back in and glue it and it'll last a little more, but it'll just happen again and again. The problem is that the only thing that limits the downwards travel of the arm here, suspension, is the shock. And yeah, then it just gets a lot of force on the shock shaft, and yeah, then you have the problem. To prevent that, you can add a zip tie here. So now it's a zip tie who takes the load, and this really helps. Make sure when you do it, you don't make it too tight, so you limit the downwards travel too much, or that you don't have free travel. We haven't felt that this affects the driving. It still drives as it did before, and since we have made this upgrade, we haven't broken a single shock shaft on the car. We have upgraded the steering links, the camber links, and the link internally in the steering, also the camber link in the rear, with ball ends from Traxxas. The problem is with the original ball ends is they have a plastic ball which gets quickly worn, and then your wheel starts wobbling around. There's too much play, and that affects the handling of the car. But this fixes that problem. We've been running for more than a year with this, and it's still perfectly good. There's a video up here on the top that shows you how to do this upgrade. We have had issues with the small stones getting stuck in the steering, but that's easily fixed by adding this 3D printed cover, and yeah, since that we have had no problems with small stones getting stuck in the steering. There's a link in the description on how to print this one. Like many others, we have problems with the stock servo. The stock servo is, well, it's not the best performing servo, but it's okay for this car. The problem with the stock servo is that it simply breaks. We have had the stock servo replaced 2 or 3 times on the warranty until we replaced it ourselves with another servo. Right now we're using an SPT servo, which is both waterproof, very fast and strong enough for this car. There's a link in the description to that one, but you could also choose, if you want more power, to use like an EcoBoost, which is also a really great servo. There's a link in the description for that. Here you can see the speed. As you can see, plenty of speed and power for this car. As many probably has discovered, it can be really hard to remove this red block here, which is needed to remove if you want to get the motor or the gearbox out of the car to work on that. So what we did to make that a little easier, we simply took a piece of sandpaper and sanded down these slots here a little, just a little. I did the same on the tabs in here. I did the same on the gearbox. It has the same system with tabs and slots, and that makes it a lot easier to remove these parts. So we recommend that. Another upgrade we did, which you cannot see, is the differential. The stock differential is made of plastic, and it's really not doable. It doesn't take long before it wears out, especially on the rear end. So we upgraded that to a steel one. It's a little expensive, but it lasts a lot longer. So far we have not broken the steel one yet. It's still running. We have a steel in the back and still the plastic in the front, but when the front breaks it will get a steel too. Remember, when you do the upgrades, that you need to change both the differential and the crown gear. You cannot just upgrade one of them. You need to upgrade both gears. Another weak spot of this car is the center drive shaft. It also breaks. Either it breaks in here or in the middle here. But so far we haven't found a better solution than the stock drive shaft. But on the other hand, it's not that expensive and it's quick and easy to remove and replace. We have had problems with the motors braking on this car, also on the Granite. It's like the motor gets stuck, cannot turn anymore, and the problem has been the bearings in the motor. There's one in the front and one in the back, that they simply, somehow either completely goes apart or just get stuck. First we thought the problem was the bearing was of bad quality, but we have found that that's actually not the reason. The problem is the way the motor is mounted. It's only mounted in one end here, and then the motor is just hanging freely. And when you make a hard landing, the motor may flex a little, so it moves downwards a little, and that puts a lot of stress on the bearings, and then they break. Some people prefer to replace the motor mount in here, but we haven't done that because the motor mount is still perfectly straight on this car. It's not bent, it's just really not stiff enough. So instead we have placed a piece of 3D printed plastic underneath the motor to support it, so the motor can no longer move downwards. And since we have done this upgrade, we haven't broken a single motor, neither on the Big Rock here or on the Granite. So I can really recommend doing that. Oh, and by the way, if you're wondering what has happened to our drive shaft here, it was simply a small rock that was stuck in here, and then it simply grinded some of the metal off. It happened a long time ago and it still works fine. You can also see here in the motor there's a lot of scratches, so yeah, it's just cosmetics.